Hello and welcome to the IntelliGentleman podcast hosted by Milt Walker. And today I wanted to talk a little bit about what's going on, what's been happening, and a lot of different things that you may or may not have been seeing in the news. And just kind of going over the state of the world at the moment, and then we're going to go off into some other topics. We're not going to spend a whole lot of time on it, but we're going to kind of just talk about it a little bit, just so people can hear my thoughts on it. So this coronavirus, it was discovered early 1900s, and since then, has been studied, and also it has actually been around for a while. It is in the same family of viruses as the rhinovirus, which is the cold virus, and the influenza virus, which is the flu virus. Okay. With that being said, it's just like any other living organism on this planet, right? It wants to survive. It wants to live, right? And that's its function. And being part of the not animal kingdom, but being part of the natural world, in the sense that it's not a human, right? It doesn't have the type of cognizance that we're aware of that differentiates us from just nature in general, right? It goes with its nature, in other words. And what is the nature of a virus? The nature of a virus is to replicate itself and to keep living, right? So it replicates itself. That's its reproduction. It replicates itself, right? So it's a cell, and so it replicates itself. Now, our body does that every day with its own cells, right? So we're constantly replicating our own cells as well. The difference is this type of organism, a virus, it replicates using other cells to do it. Okay, we use that's its energy source. We use energy from the sun. All energy can be traced back to the sun. Okay, it goes from the sun to the plants, from the plants to the animals, and from the animals to the earth, and from the earth back to the plants, and so the cycle continues, right? Just a brief overview of how it all kind of, and of course the sun is constantly feeding it back as well. So with that being said, if its nature is to survive and to reproduce, just like humans, basically, then that's its primary function. That's what it's there for. It's not malicious in any way within itself. It can be used in a malicious way. People can, like, say for instance, and I'm gonna use it on a very micro scale. I'm not gonna go macro right now, but micro scale. If someone is, and this goes to what the recommendations for keeping it from spreading, that's what it's all about, right? The micro. If a person is not practicing good hygiene, is not practicing good basic human, decency, common courtesy, malicious behavior, wanting to give someone the virus, then they're going to, they're not paying attention to what they're touching. They're not paying attention to, where they're coughing, where they're sneezing. They have no thought to the next person, right? That's the micro scale, right? They're not washing their hands after they touch certain things because they know that it could have contracted it and give it to themselves, but also pass it on to other surfaces, which will pass it on to other people. Okay? So I wanted to talk about this a little bit because I wanted people to kind of get in the mind state of where we are as a human race, as a people on this planet. As you can see, the economy around the world has been brought to a standstill. Okay? Now, what does that mean? Okay, what is economy, right? Economy is a man-made system. Okay? Economy is a man-made system. And it's a man-made system that's designed for regulating the trade of goods between other people, right? That's what an economy is about. You give someone something. It could be any type of economy too. I mean, it doesn't necessarily. I'm using that in a very general sense because bartering is a type of economy as well. Where you trade services and goods for services and goods, right? That was a type of economy. So I'm using it in I am using this in a macro sense, meaning, because I want to kind of stay out of the details of that, but, so that's a man-made system. A man-made system is always going to have flaws. It's always going to have vulnerabilities, right? Especially when it is against a natural system, like nature, right? Like the homeostasis of nature. The homeostasis of nature is always going to be preserved. Why? Because we can't control it. So being that we can't control it, we can't mess it up. Technically, we could do things that will affect it and will cause it to react, but we can't mess it up because what's going to happen and what has happened in the past is there's always a counterbalance. It's just like what happens in your body. Let's go back to the virus, okay? When the virus starts to attack the cells by attaching itself to the cells and starts to draw the nutrients from that cell, starts to eat whatever, however you want to look at it, to replicate itself, okay? When that happens, the body has a response to that, okay? The body's response is to send out its own defense mechanisms. First, it gets indicators that it's happening, right? So you get a fever, which is what are symptoms. That's actually what a symptom is. It's an indicator that something is wrong within your body, right? And so when you get those, your body is telling itself, really, hey, there's something wrong. What does that do? That causes another response. It's called an immunoresponse, right? So that causes your immune system to kick in. And your immune system, if it is strong enough, sends out defense to whatever it perceives that the threat is. Okay? Now, when it sends that out, it goes and it sees what it is, and of course, being that we've been exposed to those types of viruses before, not the same virus, but those types of viruses, because it's in the same family, remember, the body does have a response to it. Now, being that it is new to it, it doesn't necessarily happen as fast, like 3 to 5 days, like a cold or the flu, right? It doesn't really fight it off as fast as it would, because of the simple fact that it's new and it actually has to kind of adapt. Okay, now what am I trying to get at? Okay, so the same way that your body adapts is the same way that the virus adapts. I was reading an article the other day that said it mutated into 30 different types of itself. Okay. So it's trying to adapt itself to make itself more survivable inside of the human body. Okay. There's two problems with that. Number one, if that happens, it's gonna live with us like the cold and the flu virus, and there will be no cure, and it will constantly mutate, and you will never be able to fully cure it. You know, you may have a vaccine, like you got vaccines for flu, but it only lasts for a season, right? And you have to go back and get another vaccine, which is basically them injecting you with the same virus, with, you know, kind of altered a little bit so that your immune system, it prompts your immune system to actually start fighting it and to adapt, basically, and to cause your body to be able to fight it off. That's all that a vaccine is. That's all it is. It's the same. It's exactly what you're trying to vaccinate against. That's what a vaccine is. Now, a cure is something that makes it where your body is immune to it completely, where it won't even affect it, or no mutation of it will be able to affect your body. Okay, so, but bear in mind, all of these factors, even when you talk about natural remedies and everything, all these factors are based upon the fact that your immune system is doing all the work. Not the drug. The drug can help it, but the drug is not doing all the work. That's not how it works. Okay. So with that being said, when it comes back to, okay, the number two part of that, right? Why that's a problem, is because people are not, this whole social distancing, washing your hands, so on and so, staying, doing all this type of thing, that's the first defense. Because if you can keep the virus from having so many hosts that it can actually mutate, because see, what happens is, it's just like a laboratory. Your body is a laboratory for this virus. It's constantly, every iteration, every version of itself is trying to figure out a way to beat your immune system. When it doesn't work, it tries to get that same information, because it's encoded, it's DNA. So it's encoded. The information is encoded in it. It tries to, what happens? That's why there's a cycle when it comes to viruses and stuff like such, you know, things, infectious diseases. They call it shedding, where it actually flees the body. It tries to leave the body. But why is it leaving? So you got to think about it on a micro scale, and it's a very simple concept. It's nothing very, very, you know, diabolical about it. It's trying to survive, but it wants to survive with the knowledge that it learned from its previous host to take it on to the next host, so that it can mutate into something that will potentially, you know. But the problem with that is sometimes it runs into somebody with a stronger immune system, and so it's instantly killed off, or, you know, that person becomes asymptomatic and, you know, is a carrier, and it's still getting killed, but, you know, it can't cause the same symptoms that it was before. Because think about it like this also, the things that it causes in the body are the same things that carry the virus. Okay, so the coughing, the sneezing, okay, those symptoms are designed to pass. It's an organism. This is how it propagates itself. That's just like, you know, modern science has found out that certain bacteria, you got probiotics, and you got the bad, I can't think of the term right now, but the bad bacteria in your body, right? And so the probiotics are pretty much the ones that, want you to, have a good, basically what it is they send signals to your brain. They control you in certain ways where they tell your body, yeah, I want more of that fatty food, or it tells your body, oh yeah, I want more of those green plants, right? And that's why you crave it, right? But people don't understand, like, some of that stuff is not even coming from you. You know what I'm saying? But just think about that for a second. The virus does the same thing. Any microorganism like that does the same thing, because it is in a totally different realm from where you are living. It's not bound by the same laws, right? It's working at a microcosmic scale, okay? And so these impulses that it sends through you to your brain is on a very, very basic scale. Okay, so let's explore that for a second. Okay, so if that's the case, so the virus affects what it needs to infect to cause you to have these symptoms that could pass it on to something else, right? And so because if, let's just say for instance, you can't catch it just by standing next to somebody. The person has to, the virus has to travel, because it doesn't have its own mode of travel. It doesn't have that type of system. It doesn't have that type of makeup. You know what I mean? And so you have to project it basically out so that it could travel to something else. Okay? So again, thinking about it on a basic human level, if people would be aware of that and understand that, then they can stop it from going anywhere. Okay? That's where I'm kind of going with this. And if you don't, and people keep going around each other and doing these things and maliciously trying to do these things, you're only going to be the end of yourself, because eventually it's going to mutate into a version of itself that is going to be worse than any of the other viruses. Okay? And when that happens, there's not going to be any stopping it. Okay? You don't know what it could, I'm basically saying, you don't know what it could mutate into. But we've already seen that it's mutated into some pretty nasty stuff. Like, so, but it only deals with the respiratory system, which so happens to be one of our most vital systems. So, that's not something to be taken lightly. You know what I'm saying? That's not something to be looked at like, oh, you know what, it's all good. We're good. No. Because if it evolves to the point where it completely shuts down your respiratory system, all right. So we're gonna get off of this in a second, but I want to kind of tie it into what I'm going to be talking about next also. So with that, we breathe air. We need air. Oxygen. We need O2. It's actually a combination of nitrogen and oxygen. More nitrogen than oxygen also. Okay? So our breathing, our respiratory system is very vital to us right now. Now, what could happen? Okay, well, usually when people who, let's just use an example of people who go mountain climbing, right? People go mountain climbing, they experience, I forgot what the term is called, but it's a state where, you have little oxygen, because when you go up in elevation, the oxygen level decreases, the mix gets off basically, and that's why they call it thin air, because you can't really breathe it as well as you used to. Okay, and this is also present on planets that don't have the type of atmosphere that we have. That's why, like Mars's atmosphere, you can't breathe on it. Okay, You can't breathe on it. It has an atmosphere, but you can't breathe on it because it's not the same time. It's not dense enough to keep the molecules there that we need to breathe. Okay. So now that we have established that, okay, we could evolve into beings that don't require, because there are certain organisms that don't. We've found them and we've studied them a little bit, that don't require, oxygen, which is interesting, right? So when you think about that, because every living thing is evolving. So it's either one or two things. So but the way that we are living now is in homeostasis with the planet. We keep deviating from that. Why do I say we're in homeostasis with the planet? It's because we breathe the same air that the trees expel as their waste. They breathe the same air that we expel as our waste. That is a state of balance. We feed them, they feed us. Okay? Do they need us? No, because other living organisms produce enough for them to thrive on. They don't really need us for that, but we are part of that balance. Okay? Drinking my coffee. And so when you think about that, right? How can we get back to that? How can we get back to living in harmony with our planet, with our system? I mean, it's ours. If we're here and we want to be stewards of it, and we want to, people want to control it, but you can't control it. But if you want to have a place in it, then you must learn how to live harmoniously. It's just like living with other people. You have to be able to live harmoniously with those people, right? If they have a different belief system than you, then hey, you got to find some kind of middle ground, right? If they want to pray facing the east and you want to pray on your knees, and then hey, you're over here doing that and they're over there doing that. What's wrong with that? Some things are just kind of petty differences, and I say petty in the sense that it's not something for us to argue about. It's not something for us to hate each other about. It could be something that we discuss, but it's not something for us to go into any type of negative reaction to each other about. None, not at all. Especially if it's supposed to be about love, compassion, and understanding, then it definitely shouldn't evolve into something that's negative. Okay, so that's what I want to talk about a little bit for the last part of my podcast here is understanding and tolerance. Okay, understanding comes about from knowledge, right? Knowledge. It's where it starts. You learn something. I didn't know that. And then that leads to wisdom. Oh, okay, so I can take that knowledge and I can apply it this way, right? That's wisdom. When you apply the knowledge, that's wisdom. From applying that knowledge comes understanding. So now you understand a principle, okay? Because that's basic. Knowledge is this. Knowledge is a blueprint for a principle, okay? When you're dealing with science, when you're looking at science and you're looking at the natural world, and you're just observing different things, you're observing certain principles that are happening, okay? When you observe that, you first start off with a very basic understanding, which is just knowledge of it. You just know that it's there. And then from that, you see how you can apply that, right? You say, oh, okay, so the trees let out the oxygen that I breathe, and I let out what the trees breathe. So that tells me we need more trees. Right? That's wisdom. I applied that knowledge to my natural life. Okay, we need more trees. We don't need to cut that many trees down. That's a natural conclusion from that knowledge, right? When you learn that, you're like, oh, okay, so I need them. Okay, all right, so I don't need to get rid of those. All right. So when you understand that, right? Then you understand a principle. And that principle is the principle of coexistence. There's a principle of coexistence. Living things can coexist with each other. And it's really just that simple. It's really, people like to make it more complicated. But, they do, okay, you can coexist with someone. No problem. Does that mean you have to agree with everything that person does? No. I'm sure the plants don't agree with us cutting them down. They don't agree with that. I'm pretty sure of that. If they were able to tell us that in our language, that they would tell us they don't appreciate us cutting them down. Okay? I don't think there's anybody out there that would actually argue that point. Okay. But here's the thing, right? You have to be willing to go outside of yourself. You have to be willing to put yourself in somebody else's shoes, right? You have to be willing to do that mentally. When I say willing, I don't mean, well, yeah, I want to do that. Yeah, that's all nice and good, but I mean willingly in the verb sense, meaning you actually do it. You know what I'm saying? Like, don't just say you're willing to do it, but do it and see what happens. And you'll find that you find understanding. And the understanding that you find is of coexistence and tolerance. And you start tolerating things. And it's not that you're tolerating it in a sense of arrogance or in a sense of dominance or in a sense of subservience. You're not tolerating it because you think it's greater than you. You're not tolerating it because you think it's less than you. You're tolerating it because it is just as you. What does that mean? It's here in this existence just like you are. And the least thing you should do is respect it. The least thing. That's the least. Right? Now, when you look at the nature of nature, of course, it serves us to a certain extent as we should serve it. See, it's a coexistence, right? It's tolerance. It tolerates us. We should tolerate it, meaning we shouldn't do anything to change that. But in order for us to be at that level of understanding, we have to study it more. And we have to do more studying of it than we do of trying to change it. We need to do more understanding of it than we do of trying to change it. Now, there's a spiritual lesson in that. If you can do that with other people, do more understanding of them than trying to change them, then you open up a whole nother level of communication with that person that could lead to a very deep understanding, which could lead to some of the most beautiful relationships you ever had in your life. And I'm not just talking about romantic. Well, I don't like to use the word romantic, but I'm not talking about intimate relationships, and I'm not just talking about friendships, right? I'm just talking about relationships, being able to see a connection to other people, because that's what it's all about. You have to feel connected to the person that is next to you, to the person that is across the globe. If you don't feel a connection to that person, then that means you are disconnected from your humanity, because we are all connected by the same thread. We all have life. Okay? So if you didn't, you wouldn't be here. right? That's a parent. So thank you for listening, and I just wanted to get my thoughts on this and get my thoughts on a few other things, and I hope you guys enjoyed it, and I'll see y'all on the next one. Thanks again.